Greetings and salutations. This is Michael Govier from the First Day Podcast, and you are listening to Pop Goes Your World.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.
And now it's time for our feature presentation.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
What are the best movie trilogies of all time? And what franchises should have stopped at 3? Let's find out. Episode 361, Movie Trilogies. Hey, I'm Chris McBrien along with Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. This week, myself and Derek are going to run down our personal top 5 favorite movie trilogies of all time. But before our topic this week, Derek, what is new in your world of pop culture?
Hey, Chris.
Hi.
Well, I had a chance to watch a couple of movies this week.
Cool.
Both of them on streamers. Didn't get a chance to go to the theater.
You've been going to the theater lately, haven't you?
I've been out to the theater. Yeah, and I have. And Steven Spielberg's got a new movie out, which I am going to go see, but I haven't seen yet. So by this time next week, I'll have something new to talk about. I'll be talking about Spielberg's new movie in the theater. But for now, I'm just going to stick with the streamers. So I had a chance to watch 2 movies. The first one I actually watched 2 weeks ago, and we didn't have a chance to cover it. It was on Amazon, and it's called Jack Ryan Ghost War. So Amazon has done a TV series called Jack Ryan based on the books.
That's the one with the guy from The Office, right? From John Krasinski.
Yes.
I like that. I actually thought that was good.
I did too.
It was like a couple seasons long. My wife and I watched it.
Yeah, there's 3 seasons, and I think each season was either 8 or 10 episodes. So a long and involved story. So they did 3 seasons, and then instead of doing a 4th season, they did a 2-hour movie.
Oh.
I imagine it was a dollars and cents decision. Mm-hmm. It was probably more. It was probably cheaper for them to just do a movie than to do 8 episodes. It could also have something to do with the scheduling of the performers.
Sure.
Who knows? In any case, like you said, they have this TV series. I've already watched it. I really enjoyed it. I saw this new movie show up. I thought, you know what? I'm in. I like everything that's come before this. Let's give it a go. It was good. It was everything that I expected. Just like in the TV show, if you liked the show, you'll probably like this movie. It picks up, again, if after the end of the 3rd season of the show, a little bit of time has passed. They do make comments and they reference things from the show that have happened to these characters. There are characters from the show who are obviously in the movie that they reach out to. Some of them have just small little parts to remind you that this is someone they've worked with before. Again, I would say it's sort of a good movie. I would probably give it like a B- or a B. It's good. It's not amazing, but it's certainly better than a lot of the mediocre stuff that's out there right now. So if you're already a fan of the show, I would definitely say give this one a try. It's called Jack Ryan Ghost War. It's on Amazon.
Okay.
And then the second one, this one I was really, I really want to strongly recommend. It's on Netflix and it's called Ladies First. Chris, have you happened to hear about this one? It stars Sacha Baron Cohen, who might be better known to most people as Borat.
Borat, yeah. No, I've never even heard of it. I think I would have heard of it with Sacha Baron Cohen. No. Okay. Tell me about it. Educate me, please.
It just dropped in the last week or two. Okay. And very loosely, the premise is that Sacha plays a very misogynistic man who, hits all the stereotypes in all the worst possible ways. And then 15 minutes into the movie, something happens and he hits his head. And when he wakes up, the world has gone topsy-turvy to his perspective, where women are entirely on top in the world and men are now subservient to women the way that women traditionally have been more subservient to men in our normal world.
Sounds like the Barbie movie.
It definitely touches on a lot of that, but this one is definitely more, while there's definitely social commentary in this one, just as there is in Barbie, I would say this one is pitched more as a comedy. A lot of it is played for laughs at the expense of the men, which is absolutely how you need to do this kind of a movie. And the amount of world building that's been put into this, but is not focused on, is outstanding. Like little things, like when he's first just looking around his apartment trying to understand what's happening, he's got a copy of a novel he's reading. It's not Harry Potter, it's Harriet Potter. And it's not the Lord of the Rings, it's the Ladies of the Rings. And again, it's these little details where just things that have traditionally been male-centric are now female-centric, but they don't spend a lot of time focusing on that. It's just set dressing for the scene. But if you are paying attention to these little details in the background, it just really immerses you in this world so much more quickly and so much better. And the female lead is played by Rosamund Pike, who people may recognize from the movie Gone Girl. She was the main woman in Gone Girl, the one that's actually gone. And she's great in this too. It's while the premise might sort of sound silly or even might sound like, oh, I'm going to watch this and get angry at it or be, not really get it. Like, it's worth the watch. The movie's 90 minutes with credits, so you can get it in and out in under an hour and a half. Sacha Baron Cohen does satire so well. Mm-hmm. You've just got to trust that he's not going to put his name on something that is not going to really get the job done. And while I personally felt that the ending was just a little rushed and a little too, happy, it definitely makes a strong social commentary about gender roles in our world and some of the things that men more specifically than women just take for granted and make assumptions and don't realize how big a gap there is in certain things in our society. And when you put them on the screen in a very humorous way and you make fun of it, especially with the swapping of the genders, it just shines that spotlight so much brighter on some things that I think a lot of people may just take for granted until they see it in this way. And I think you're going to have the haters are going to go, oh, that's not how that really is when it's the other way around. It's like, yeah, it totally is. It's actually probably so much worse than what they're showing in this movie. But again, it's a comedy. So anyway, it's called Ladies First. It's on Netflix. It's really good. I strongly recommend it.
There you go. Oh, I wanted to mention before I get into my pop culture thing, celebrated my 18th anniversary this past weekend with my wife. 18
Congratulations.
years. 18 years. I ain't saying she's a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no broke. That's me. So yeah, that's a big thing for us. Obviously, I wanted to mention that. But the pop culture thing that I've done this last week, I started watching on Amazon Prime, and I think you're aware that this is on there, and I'm assuming this is on in the States as well as Canada. SCTV is on Amazon Prime. Did you know that?
I saw it show up. I thought it was just season 1 right now. Is that?
That's all that I've been. I started watching right from the very beginning, and obviously it's the world's smallest TV station in Melonville, and that's the premise that holds it together, right? So I obviously watched this as a kid. I loved it. I thought it was better than Saturday Night Live. It was so good. And when you go back and watch like the first episode, I've watched the first couple of episodes now. It's so raw. Oh my gosh. It doesn't become quite as polished as it was, in later seasons. I'll tell you that.
Sure.
It debuted on my birthday, my 7th birthday, September 21st, 1976 is when the show debuted. And for the first 6 episodes, it was only on once a month back then.
Once a month? Wow.
Yeah, once a month it came on. And then in early 77, it was on every second week. And then by fall of 77, it was on weekly. But like I say, watching these episodes, so Jane Eastwood was in them, and John Candy played, you remember Johnny LaRue?
Oh, yeah.
One of his characters. But in the first episode, I was like, holy smokes, it's completely different. Like, he's just brutal. He's drunk and he's smashing things. He knocks a woman over at one point. I'm like, this is not like the stuff that Johnny LaRue was always kind of, like a wild character. He was like one of these like sort of overindulgent Hollywood types, but this was like different. It definitely, they polished it up a bit. Harold Ramis was in the episodes, but one of the other characters there right from the beginning was Andrea Martin's Perini Scleroso. Remember her? She was like she was like the maid that didn't speak English. She would she would go like that. She was a really funny character. And then on the second episode too, there was Harold Ramis did this sketch called Undercover Mountie, playing on obviously.
Oh, that I remember. Yes.
Yeah, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and so he's an undercover Mountie, but he's So he's undercover. He doesn't have a police uniform, but he's on a horse. So he's total giveaway that he's a Mountie. So it was pretty funny. So there's definitely tidbits there of like some of this good stuff that's to come, but it's really raw. Right. It's not like the later ones, but I thought it was pretty good. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that I started watching that. So I want to watch it all the way through. And my wife is like, "Hey, go ahead, watch it. It's all good." So she seems to be enjoying it as well. All right, and I also have this.
Here's your dad joke of the week.
Derek, did you hear about the guy that collapsed while trying to climb Mount Everest?
I did not.
Yeah, authorities found Himalayan there.
Oh, speaking of raw, that joke was pretty raw, dude.
He developed a bit of a gambling problem there.
Cannot relate.
That's deja vu. Haven't we met somewhere before?
We're going to watch Johnny Knoxville get kicked in the nuts for 20 minutes.
Fine, being.
Guys watching other guys get hit in the nuts is funny.
Why are you always in such a bloody rush, man?
I can't believe you find this funny.
In women's tennis, I always root against the heterosexual.
That guy just pooped himself. That is hilarious.
She whose bosoms defy gravity.
Wait, those weren't women?
All right, so this week we're going to talk about movie trilogies. We're going to get to our top 5 list of each of us of what our personal favorite trilogies of all time are from movie trilogies. But before we get into that, I want to talk about this a little bit. Derek, do you think a trilogy needs all 3 films to be great? Or can you forgive if it has 1 week entry?
Well, I think you can forgive, but it has to be still decent. It can't just be fall off a cliff. This one is garbage. It still has to be reasonable. Because again, without going into too many specifics, because I think my list is going to hit on a couple of these, you can have a trilogy, as often happens, where one of the 3 movies, most often it's the first one, is amazing. It is so good. And then that's when they're like, you know what, let's make a couple more of these, and away you go. And the quality will often start to dip a little bit. And occasionally you get those rare examples where the first one's good, and then once they really know what they're doing, the second one really peaks, and then they can't land the plane, and the third one sort of falls down. And I think, when you start with a really high bar, getting that sort of third one to have that same level of excellence is often very, very difficult. And so for a lot of the trilogies, and a couple of the ones on my list for sure, and probably a couple on your list, part 1, fantastic. Part 2, fantastic. Part 3 is just good. And I mean, if you go from an A plus to a B minus, to me, that's really good. Even to a C, that's still pretty good. But if you went from an A to a D minus, I don't know if I could forgive that level of disparity between the films. But if it's conceived as a trilogy that requires 3 movies to tell the story, I might be more forgiving than if it's just, here's 3 installments of some characters doing random crap. But again, that's something, and again, I'm going to talk more about this with some of my picks, but yeah.
You've mentioned a couple things there I think we need to unpack. I think, first of all,
go for it.
What do you think is harder, delivering a great first film or sticking the landing with the third one?
I think the third, landing the plane at the end of the third one is probably the hardest. And I think,
because like you said, a lot of times the first movie's great, and that's the reason why it got sequels in the first place. So
yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Yeah, we got to remember, movie making is a business. Yes, it is art, and yes, there's a lot of artists that do what they do for art's sake. They have something to say. They have a vision they want to share. They're a unique talent of a generation. I give you all of that, but the overwhelming majority of movies are done to make money. And so if your first movie isn't great, you're less likely to get a green light to make part 2 and or part 3, because people aren't going to give you the money to do it. You're not going to be able to finance it. And so if the first one is good enough to make enough money that people are willing to give you more money to do a couple more of these movies, that's when it tends to become a little more difficult, especially because often that first one is like capturing lightning in a bottle, and you're like, well, where do we go from here? Well, we got a truck full of money just drove up to make part 2. Let's figure it out. And then you have some occasions where the filmmaker will say, I always conceived of this as a bigger story, but I knew I got to get the first one out the door first. So Yeah, I think making that third one is always the most difficult because so rarely is a filmmaker given carte blanche to just be like, sure, you think you're going to need to make 3? Go for it. And then they can set the movie up in that way. And again, I'm sure we have a couple of examples where we can talk about stuff like that.
You mentioned something else that's interesting was whether or not it's conceived as a trilogy right from the get-go. Like, that's why I wonder, is it better is a trilogy better if it's conceived as a trilogy from the get-go, or is it better if it just evolves organically?
Well, I mean, I think you've got examples of both, and you've got arguments for both. So I don't think there's a right answer to that one. I think you can have excellence in both formulas, but I think you also see more often than not failure with both formulas. So I don't think there's a silver bullet for that one. I think it is what it is.
I would also like to point out that, because this is mythology, movie mythology, that George Lucas had this grand plan for all these movies. He did not. He did not. He made Star Wars. It was the biggest movie of all time when it came out. And so he knew that he had to do a sequel. And so when it came time to do the sequel, the working title of his sequel, when they started developing it and shooting it, was Star Wars 2. So It wasn't until he changed it to The Empire Strikes Back. And then after it came out, after they were preparing to make that movie, then they re-released the first movie, and then they started calling it Episode 4 or whatever the hell they call it.
Right.
New Hope and all
that New Hope.
Crap and garbage. But no, it was never conceived as a trilogy from the get-go. That's one thing. Can you consider a trilogy a quote-unquote trilogy if after it there's another sequels or prequels or spin-offs or something like that? And so if it goes to like 4 or 5, can you still look at it and go, well, I'm just going to look at this trilogy? Like you had mentioned Rocky. Can you say, oh, one of my favorites is the Rocky trilogy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and say, whatever, they all suck. Like, can you still look at a trilogy that way, or does it not become a trilogy anymore once you add more movies?
No, I think it really depends on my simple answer is no, but I'm going to qualify that. In some movies, they make 3 and then a certain amount of time passes, or you get a new director or a new writer, or maybe the main actor leaves and you want to bring someone else in, and you use some of the intellectual property from the first quote unquote trilogy to make more movies, but you sort of keep them in the same vein. In that kind of case, I could forgive it and say like, and I have an example of that in my list where it's like they did 3 and then like 20 years passed and they're like, we're going to make some more of those. Right. I can confidently say that the 3 that I'm going to talk about are a trilogy, and newer movies are part of now a new franchise, whether they make 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, I don't know. But then if you have something like, let's say James Bond, there's been like 25 James Bond movies. Right. I don't think you could just say, these 3 Roger Moore ones are a trilogy. We're doing this, I
agree with you.
You maybe could say, if the performer. So again, we'll go with James Bond. So I think Daniel Craig made 4 or 5 movies, but let's say for argument's sake, he only did 3 and then that was it. In that case, you might say the trilogy of movies in this larger franchise,
the Daniel Craig
feature
trilogy.
That have in this case, in this particular example, if we said Daniel, again, want to be clear, we know he's been in more than 3, so this is, but if he was only in 3 and you said, if in this hypothetical, if we said, I want to do the 3, Daniel Craig as the Daniel Craig trilogy of Bond movies, I would probably give you that. But to then, like I said, but to look and go, well, we're going to do Sean Connery's first 3 and go, we're doing the Sean Connery trilogy of Bond movies. And no, I'm sorry. And especially with something like Bond, where the movies don't really connect to each other. They're very much episodic. While there is a loose thread that carries through. Like another one I kept seeing online is people like the Mission Impossible trilogy. I'm like, you mean the first 3? Like there's been 7 or 8 of those movies now. There isn't really a quote unquote trilogy. So I think when you say trilogy, some people are a little fast and loose with that description.
All right, so I want to do this right now off the hop.
Here's our hot takes.
I want to ask you if there's any trilogies that you think that should have stopped after 1 movie and not gone on to be a trilogy. I'll start off with an example. I've got a couple.
Sure.
The Matrix trilogy.
That was literally the one I was just
good.
thinking, The Matrix.
I remember a buddy of mine was like, "Oh, the other Matrix movies were so good. They were no, The Matrix was a great film. It was groundbreaking, and because it made a lot of money and it was so groundbreaking, they made sequels. They sucked. They should have stopped at the first one. That's what I think.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of like newer comedies, but The Hangover did 3 movies too, didn't they? They should have stopped. At the
They sure
first
did, yeah.
Do the first movie. It's funny, whatever. People like it. I was impartial to it, but, end it there. And then my biggest hot take of all, okay, I might get in trouble for this one. I think Jurassic Park should have stopped after the first movie.
Oh, I agree with that completely.
The second one was like, all right, whatever. The third one was garbage. And then they kind of rebooted it, or whatever you and I call it, reboots, reimaginations, or whatever, with Jurassic World. And they went on a whole another, they came up with a whole another franchise there. Jurassic Park should have stuck with one.
But going back to what we talked about a minute ago, if you had Jurassic Park trilogy on your list, that first 3, I would give you that as a defined trilogy, because so again, those were there, and then there was a significant amount of time, and then when they revisited that property, it was like completely different. While they did harken back to some of the things from that first trilogy, you didn't need to know really anything about those first 3 movies to enjoy, or hopefully enjoy, those newer films. But no, and that's another one I agree. I agree that the first one should have. I would have been just okay. I would have been fine with it. Partly for me, it was the first movie, Jurassic Park, was very close to the book, which was a huge bestseller. And then when the movie made so much money, and they were like, "Oh my God, we need to make a sequel," the author Michael Crichton rushed a sequel out the door as fast as he could. And I read it; it was pretty good. And then they didn't even use it. They were like, "Nah, we don't like that. We're going to make our own movie." And it's like, come on. Like, yeah, I think that was a huge misstep. It was a cash grab.
So those are ones that maybe should have stopped at 1, like we said, and not gone on. But ones that have gone on to 3 and made trilogies. Are there any finales of the third one that you think really delivered for you?
I have a couple on my list, so when I talk about that, I'll let you know. But one of the other, I'll give you a hot take then. Okay. Movies that should have ended at 1, and I don't know if you're going to agree with this one or not. Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yes, I agree. 100%.
I mean, I enjoy Temple of Doom. Again, good. I felt it was nowhere near as good as Raiders.
Not even. And then
The Last Crusade, I really liked. Like for me, I would put Raiders of the Lost Ark A+. Temple of Doom's like maybe a C+ on its best day. Yep. And then The Last Crusade with Sean Connery, I'd probably give an A-, B+, A-. Like I really like that one. But I would have been perfectly fine if it was just Raiders of the Lost Ark, one and done, and just keep re-releasing that one in the theater every few years. I mean, I went to see it in the theater probably 7 or 8 times when I was a kid. And that was one of those ones that they did re-release a few times. And every time it came back to the theater, in fact, I saw it in the theater probably about 10 years ago. They were it was like one of these art houses had a print copy. So we went out and saw it. And then coming up this fall, I'm going to see it with the symphony playing the entire score of the movie live over top of the movie. Wow. So I'm like, I love Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I'll give you another one. Jaws.
Yes,
Jaws should have stopped at 1. Like, I mean, I enjoyed Jaws too, because I saw it when I was a kid. But I mean, it wasn't great. And Jaws 3 was garbage, and Jaws 4 was one of the worst movies ever made. So absolutely, there's another.
But again, I wouldn't call Jaws a trilogy.
No, because they made 4 of them, right?
They made 4,
but
right?
Still, it's another one of those ones that just should have stopped, right? I'll circle back to this one, but I just want to mention, for me, the trilogy that delivers the most in the third one is in Return of the Jedi, the original Return of the Jedi, when at the very, very final end of the movie, after they're all celebrating and the songs played and stuff, and Luke looks off into the forest and sees the ghost of Ben, and then Yoda, and then old Sebastian Shaw, which was Darth Vader. It's like, it was just so perfect. It was like the perfect finale. And then George Lucas, of course, had to ruin it by going and superimposing Hayden Christensen over top of Sebastian Shaw. So that was just awful, so. But, before we get into our list too, I also wanted to touch base and talk about the highest grossing trilogies of all time too. So we'll do that here.
Box Office Mojo.
Any guesses? You want to take a guess? The highest grossing trilogy of all time?
Is it not the original Star Wars trilogy?
It's not.
That's got to be in the top three. Even adjusted for inflation, it's not?
I'm not adjusting for inflation.
Okay, hold on. Let me think about this. Now we're talking trilogy. So we're not just saying the first three, so for example, Pirates of the Caribbean, I think they did 4 or 5 movies. We're not just saying, let's just take the first 3 of those. It's an actual trilogy. They only made 3.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, okay.
All right. So
Okay. After all of that, I'm going to say The Lord of the Rings.
It's Avatar.
Oh, okay.
Because
that makes sense.
Avatar, The Way of Water, and Avatar, Fire and Ash. The first 2 are in the 2 of the top 5 films ever made. Star Wars not the Star Wars sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
The Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker is number 2. $4.48 billion. Avatar was $5.66 billion.
Wow.
Jurassic World is 3rd because it has Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, and Jurassic World Dominion. Although they've added a 4th one since then. I
was going to say, didn't they do a 4th? Yeah. So again, I don't know if you can call that a trilogy. While there are only 3 Avatar movies, I do believe there is a 4th and final one coming. So for now, we'll give it to you as a trilogy because there are only 3.
Gotcha. And then it's got Spider-Man 4th, Tom Holland, $3.93 billion.
Oh, okay. Again, their 4th one is about to come out, and that's not necessarily a trilogy because there's clearly going to be more of them.
Lord of the Rings is 5th, so that it's got.
There we go. Made the top 5.
So there you go. Okay.
So a lot of movie trilogies are based on books, which again have been conceived of as trilogies, 3 books. So I'm going to give you an example where I'm going with this. So if a movie, there's a practice now in Hollywood where in order to make more money, they basically take one book and divide it into multiple parts so they can make more movies out of it. So I'm going to use the example of The Hunger Games. There are 3 novels in the Hunger Game trilogy, the original novels.
Yep.
They did the movies. They did part 1, part 2, and then they did Hunger Games Part 3.1 and Hunger Games Part 3.2. And it's like, wait a minute. It's 3 books, but you've taken book 3 and split it into 2 parts. So would you call that a movie trilogy?
They did that with the vampire one,
Harry Potter, they did that with the last one.
It became a thing for a while there.
The Twilight movies, they did it.
Let's take a movie and split it up and just make more money. So dumb. Oh.
Yeah, so again, the Hunger Games on my list.
I got to jump in here.
Yeah,
Didn't they also take The Hobbit, which was 1 book, a small book compared to the Lord of the Rings, and they made it into 3 movies?
Yeah.
When it should have just been
originally,
1.
Now, hang on. I'm going to circle back to that. Let me go back to Hunger Games for a minute.
Okay.
So in my Hunger Games example, it is conceived of, there are 3 books and there are 4 movies, with the 3rd movie has the same title, Part 1 and Part 2. Would you consider that a movie trilogy, even though there are 4 movies, but it's very clear that the last 2 are even named da-da-da Part 1 and da-da-da Part 2? It's based on a single book? It's a technicality. Yeah. So
I guess so. Because I mean, it was, like I say, it was a thing there for a while. A number of years ago, where we're going to take a movie and split it into Part 1 and Part 2 just to make more money, and just drop it out. So I guess it would be a trilogy.
Yeah. And then going back to your Hobbit, so I don't know, it may have been a while since you've actually read The Hobbit. Now, I actually reread it a few years back, and the book itself is 2 distinct parts. Halfway through the novel, it says Part 2. And so when they said they were going to make more than 1 Hobbit movie, I thought that makes sense. The book is clearly broken into 2 distinct parts that are almost equal in length. That makes sense to me. And then they managed to turn into 3 movies. And I'm like, you know what? I'm all out. And I refused to watch them. I was so angry when I heard that. I'm like, this is just a cheap money grab. I'm out. So
especially when you compare
it all comes
the
down
books.
to dollars.
If you were just to stack the books up on top of each other, of the Lord of the Rings, at least each one is like this huge book. It's like huge thick. It's like 1,000 pages. And then there's 3 of them, and they made 3 movies. And The Hobbit is this little tiny book, which he did first. Why? And again, they made that one second, but then made it into a trilogy. It was strictly for money. 100%.
It totally was. Okay. Anyway, that was it. I'm ready to jump in the list whenever you're ready to get started.
You get us kicked off as always. So your number 5 movie trilogy of all time. What have you got?
All right. Well, I'm going to lean right into your hot take. My my number 5, and we're going with favorites here. These are my personal favorites.
Yeah, me too.
Is the Hangover trilogy, which you just slagged on.
Well, because they should have stopped after one, but convince me why they shouldn't have. Okay.
Okay. So we've done episodes where we talk about sequels. And one of the things that I always appreciate with a sequel, and even more so in a trilogy, is when you get everybody comes back for the next one. Which doesn't always happen when you do a sequel, especially if there's been like some breakout stars and they're too busy or too big to come back. They want too much money, or there's creative differences. The writer leaves. And so sometimes you have like these problems and the sequels just don't work as well. The Hangover is one of those ones where all the primary cast came back. Even a whole bunch of the secondary cast came back. And then in the third one of the things that I thought they did really well was, they continue to have this full cast coming back, but they were able to reference things from the first and the second movie that on their own, they were parts of the movie. You didn't really think anything of it. And then in the third one, they were able to sort of circle back and be like, well, remember when this happened? This is what was going on that you may not have been aware of. And it actually worked really well. I do not believe it was conceived that way originally, but I think when they went to the creative team and said, we want you to do a third movie, they put their thinking caps on and they really went back and said, look, we can just give you more outrageous comedy, dick and fart jokes and some unnecessary nudity and bad words, which they did. They gave you all that stuff. And that's what you've come to expect from this series of movies. But I think they did a really good job with the story as well of actually giving you a decent story. And that's one of the things that I really like about the first Hangover is it's not like one of these comedies that just feels like it's a bunch of loose sketches thrown together. They actually have a story that they go through and the whole premise for maybe people haven't seen in a while is that, they've been roofied. None of them remember what happened the night before. So the part of the fun of the movie is you as the audience are learning what they did the night before as they are. And then they use that gimmick again in the second one. And then the third one, they don't use that gimmick at all. They just sort of lean back on some of the stories and the characters. We talk about how you don't get a lot of good comedies anymore. The Hangover is definitely one of my favorite comedies from the last 25 years. The first one, I do think part 2 and 3, the quality dips, but I don't think it falls off a cliff. So I was very happy that they made 3 of these. And I do feel that with this third one, they really did a good job of wrapping up all the loose ends. That there was not going to be any more movies. They did sort of give you a little tease at the end about some shenanigans that they probably could continue on with. But it was very clear that this was it. Like these actors and these characters, they were saying goodbye to the audience by the end of it. So my number 5 favorite movie trilogy, especially something a little more recent, is The Hangover. They came out in 2009, 2011, and 2013. So something a little newer. That's my number 5.
I like how you mentioned your trilogy for number 5 doesn't fall right off the cliff, because my number 5 does fall off the cliff.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the Godfather trilogy.
Oh,
I think most critics and even filmmakers would consider the Godfather movies to be the gold standard of cinematic storytelling. Obviously one of the greatest films ever made is The Godfather. It won Best Picture in 1972. The Godfather Part 2 was as good as the original. It won Best
Every
Picture
bit as good, if not better.
Yep. Like it was so good. So it begs the question, can a trilogy still be good or great if one installment is quite weak, which is the third one would be? But the thing is, if you look at it as an overall sort of story arc, it does work, because part 1 is the rise, part 2 is the corruption, and part 3 is really the consequences of everything.
Yeah.
And so, because ultimately the Godfather trilogy isn't even really about organized crime. It's about ambition and power and control and how they, affect people. And if you think about it, the trilogy starts with a family wedding, and it ends with Michael completely alone, which is a really bleak and powerful story arc. So I think it's one of the reasons why the Godfather trilogy has to be included in this conversation. So it's my number 5. On to your number 4.
Yeah. I figure as 2 movie nerds, this one had to be on the list, and I was quite confident you were gonna put it on your list. Again, I agree with everything you said, and I agree that Godfathers 1 and 2, arguably 2 of the best movies made in my lifetime. But they are they did come out in the 70s, which is a little ahead of my time. Like I was born in 74, so they were both, part 1 and 2 were both in theaters before I was alive. So I'm not as connected to them. I don't have that much of a personal stake. I think our podcast sort of starts with in 1980 and moves forward. That's when we really started getting into movies, with only a touch into the 70s. So I'm glad you brought this up, because I just don't feel I have that personal connection to really talk about it in the detail that it needs. So I'm glad you brought it up. So anyway, we're moving on to my number 4.
Your number 4.
My number 4 trilogy, and this touches on some of the things we already talked about, and this is the new Planet of the Apes trilogy. So this includes the movies Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and War for the Planet of the Apes, coming out in 2011, 2014, and 2017. So there were the original Planet of the Apes movies from the 60s and 70s.
Yes.
This has absolutely nothing to do with any of those, in no way, shape, or form. Then there was an attempt at a reboot, except for, well, yeah. And then they tried to do a reboot. Tim Burton made a movie in the it was like late 90s or early 2000s with Mark Wahlberg, and again, star-studded cast, all sorts of practical makeup, which looked amazing, but the movie was a hot mess, and it just crashed and burned just like the ship at the end of the movie. Spoiler if you haven't seen it. So that one is a dud. This is a brand new, well, not brand new anymore, but when it came out in 2011, was a brand new conception of how do we tell this story. And this is one of those ones where it needed more than one movie. The first movie was really good. It got a lot of positive praise from the critics. It made a lot of money, and people wanted to see more. And the creators of this first one had a clear idea of where they wanted this franchise to go. And given that it was a franchise that people had a familiarity with, they were able to get the backing from like the big studios to make these movies. It was pretty clear that it wasn't going to be another one and done. If the first one was a hit, there's going to be a pile of money to make the rest of these movies. And in the course of doing that, these movies take place over a wide span of time, like between each of the films, and you follow the literal rise of the apes as the dominant species. And it's almost like an origin story to what you think you already know. And you actually follow the ape characters as they get smarter, as they learn to become more of a civilization and not just instinctual animals. And through the course of all 3 movies, how the humans that are still alive end up coexisting with the apes being the dominant species on the planet. And if you haven't seen this trilogy, or you haven't seen it in a while, it's worth a rewatch. I just did the rewatch not too long ago, and they really hold up. The special effects work is fantastic, given that it's mostly computer generated, if not entirely. They use a lot of the same motion capture stuff that was used in movies like The Lord of the Rings and a lot of the Marvel movies now. Andy Serkis plays Caesar, the main ape, and so you're getting a fantastic performance from him. This is really good, and this is again one of those ones where the way that the story ends at the end of the third one, it's very clear that this is it. They've told the story they want to tell. They end the story in a place where there's a very satisfying ending, and then, a few years ago, they were like, oh, we've got a new Planet of the Apes movie. And while it is technically supposed to take place in this world, it's supposed to take place like, I think 50 or 100 years later. Like, it's not a part of this trilogy that I'm talking about. So this is sort of like that Jurassic Park example. This is clearly a trilogy that was written, designed, produced, shot, and released as a 3-part story. And that's it. And anything new they're doing now is its own reboot of whatever. It's not it's not like adding on a part 4, part 5, part 6 kind of deal. But anyway, so my favorite trilogy number 4 is this Planet of the Apes trilogy, 2011, 2014, 2017.
All right. My number 4, I'm going to play hard and fast with the rules a little bit, kind of like I alluded to earlier. I'm going to go with the Toy Story trilogy, because I know they made a 4th one. I think there's talk of a 5th one too.
Fifth one coming out next week. Yeah.
That doesn't exist in my world. If you just look at the Toy Story trilogy, the 3 movies, it begins with a child receiving toys and ends with the child giving them away. That is one of the most emotionally satisfying arcs in modern cinema, I think you could argue. It's a perfect 3-act play. I've said this before about things like Shrinking, when we talked about Shrinking, and we talked about Ted Lasso. 3-act. That's it. Do your 3 and get out. And I think Toy Story fits that too. And 4 and 5, get rid of them. Because in the first one, it addresses like, what if I'm not the favorite? Because it's about identity and jealousy, right? Like Woody is Andy's favorite toy, and you know his self-worth is based on that. And Buzz Lightyear shows up and threatens Woody's status. And then the second one, it deals with like the fear of being forgotten, like because Woody discovers that he could be immortal in like a museum, right? Mm-hmm. And then in the third one, it's all about letting go. And that this is a major payoff in the third one. Andy's leaving for college, and the toys fear abandonment from him. Mm-hmm. And it's so good. Andy grows up, the toys move on, and Woody learns that love means accepting change, not resisting it. The ending when Andy passes the toys to the little girl, that is the emotional conclusion of the trilogy. It's really well done. And it just has to stop after that. So for my number 4, I'm saying it's the Toy Story trilogy, even though they made a 4th one and there's a 5th one coming out next week, you said. I don't care. It's a trilogy in my book, and that's all there is to it. So that's my number 4.
Okay. It's your podcast. We'll give you that one.
All right. Thanks. Okay.
I run fast and loose with the rules occasionally as well. So we'll give you that one. As long as the next one follows the rules, we'll be okay.
It does. Okay. All right. So you're number 3. What do you got?
My number 3, I got news for you. My 3, 2, 1 are all going to be right in the super nerd wheelhouse.
Okay. You are a super nerd, so it's perfect.
Oh, well, we're gonna prove it here. You can underline those words, put them in bold capital letters. Okay, number 3, we're going to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We're going to the Guardians of the Galaxy. So, I know people are gonna be like, "Really? You going with the Guardian?" I'm going with Guardians of the Galaxy largely for the reasons we just talked about. There are 3 movies. While they may not have initially been conceived of as 3 movies, like the story of the first one is they gave James Gunn the keys and they said, take a bunch of ragtag characters, make a movie. If the movie sucks, we don't care because nobody knows these characters. They were like C-list, D-list characters. And he hit a home run and people were like, oh my God, like this movie's really good. We don't know who these characters are, but we love them. They're great. And is just the way he decided to tell this story, it became a huge hit, as so many of those Marvel movies were when they that first sort of batch of them came out. And it didn't take long. A few years later, they made a sequel, which was pretty much set up in the end of the first one. It was pretty much set up that they could do a sequel, as all the comic book movies. Like, comics never stop. You can always just make more of them. And then the third movie, again, has that, like I said, with some of the other ones, they had done 2 movies that were very successful, that were very popular, that showed some development of the characters. The characters, their story arcs grew, the relationships between these characters grew. And then in the third part, there was that finale, the finality that comes with wrapping up the story. And again, they all have story arcs. And by the third one, everything at the end of it got wrapped up. It was very clear. Everyone sort of went in their own different directions as they moved on to the next phase of their life at the end of these adventures. And that's it. That's not to say that they can't or won't make another Guardians of the Galaxy movie, but the team itself, the core members that make up the quote Guardians, they've all left at the end of this trilogy. And so, yeah, you could slot new characters in and these would now be the new Guardians of the Galaxy, as comic books do all the time. But this cast, this crew, this team that is in the first 3 movies, this is it. They've got these 3 and they're done. Mm-hmm. And like, these movies are great. We talk about how something like the Marvel Cinematic Universe has got to be like, I think there's almost 40 movies in there now, if not more. And a lot of them are excellent and will stand the test of time and will continue to be fan favorites for a long time and still hold up. Like the first Iron Man, which was the first one out, is still arguably one of the 5 best Marvel movies they've made. But there have been a lot of stinkers, especially more recently, like the BU, a lot of stinkers. This Guardians trilogy really holds up. All 3 movies are really good. And I think that's important because, like, yeah, they did 3 Iron Man movies. The third one was just okay. They did I think 4 Captain America movies, and while the first 3 were really good, they were really tied into the Avengers movies. So it's kind of hard to see those 3 stand on their own by themselves. But these Guardians movies, you can sit down and watch any of the 3 pretty much in any order. The movies themselves are really good. They hold up on their own, but they also will really pack a punch if you've seen the other movies in the trilogy and you sort of see that development of the characters. So my number 3 favorite trilogy, Guardians of the Galaxy.
All right, good pick. And we watched the first one here on the podcast, so I'm somewhat familiar with it, at least.
There you go.
My number 3, I'm going with George A. Romero's Dead trilogy. Now, these films are very different from one another, but if you look at them all together, they make a trilogy. There's Night of the Living Dead, and then Dawn of the Dead, and then Day of the Dead. And the thing that's cool about them is rather than like follow like the same characters like a lot of trilogies do, George A. Romero uses each film instead to almost explore like a different stage of societal collapse and a different stage of zombies, really. And then the movies are not really even just about zombies. It's about people. It's about human beings. And so Night of the Living Dead is obviously the beginning of this, where society doesn't understand what's going on, what's happening. People are confused and stuff like that. And the biggest threat isn't always the zombies. It's the inability of people to cooperate with each other, right? And that's the best part of the movie. And then it goes to Dawn of the Dead, which is the middle chapter, where society is pretty much collapsed, and survivors start to adapt, to everything. And then Day of the Dead, which is the end, civilization is pretty much gone at this point, and humanity just exists in sort of isolated pockets, if you will, and the survivors are more dangerous than the undead are. So it's like, if you look at it, it's almost like the trilogy is like a story of civilization's death. It's so good. And again, Romero keeps going back to that theme of human conflict is more destructive than zombies are. And of course, I've just always got to go back to Night of the Living Dead, the first one. The end of that movie is one of the greatest final scenes I think ever filmed. I don't think a modern studio would ever make a movie and release it with that sort of pessimistic ending and that horrible way it ends. Like, so good. So, I'm going to go with, for my number 3, the George A. Romero Dead trilogy. So that's what I got.
So Chris, I haven't actually, I saw the first one because we watched it for this podcast, but I'm not familiar with the other ones. I mean, I've heard of them, but I've never watched them. I'm just looking at this up here. So apparently in the 2000s, Romero did a new series, Land of the Dead, Diary of the Dead, Survival of the Dead. And then apparently there is another one upcoming called Twilight of the Dead. So while and I think, again, this hits sort of that Jurassic Park example. Those first 3 were done obviously much closer together, and to your point, there's a very thematic, like boom, boom, boom. But then there's a 20-year gap between the Day of the Dead, which was the third one you just talked about, and then the next 3, which he did in succession in 05, 07, and 09. So it's interesting that so many of these trilogies and movies that we're talking about end up having, sequels that come way later outside of the original trilogy. So
I think that's more of a case of that George A. Romero tried a few different things, like Creepshow, for example.
Yeah.
And they just didn't work and couldn't find it. And he realized he had to go back to what he did best. And that was his way to make his living. So he went back to that again. Should he have gone back and done those other ones, or should they have even existed? No, I don't think so. They did a remake of the Dawn of the Dead as well, if I remember, in like...
Is that the one in the shopping mall?
Yeah, that was in like 2004.
That one like I've seen. Yeah.
And the zombies are all like super fast and run real fast. And like that one,
yeah.
It wasn't awful, but it just wasn't the same. They also did a remake of Night of the Living Dead in 89, I think it was. It was Tom Savini, who is, one of the greatest makeup artists of all time in horror. And he actually directed the remake, and it just wasn't good. It didn't have that same sort of social commentary behind it that I think is important in this whole thing. So yeah, there's lots of imitators, but they're not the same as the original. That's for sure. So
there you go.
We'll go there. Okay, we're on to our number 2. What do you got? We're getting
All right.
good
Well,
now.
I think a lot of people would assume this is my number one, but it's going to be my number two. And we're talking the Batman films from Christopher Nolan. So we have Batman Begins in 2005, The Dark Knight in 2008, and The Dark Knight Rises in 2012. And this is a good example where you said, where we're talking about, does the third part fall off the cliff? This one, parts 1 and 2 are really good. And just like you would mention with The Godfather, this third one, it had a hard act to follow and it did not hit the mark. A lot of people just want to forget this one happened, but it is necessary to complete the story that Nolan's trying to tell. This is another example where The Dark Knight, the second part, without a question, is the best of these three movies. The first one is excellent, but this Dark Knight arguably is one of the best movies of the last 25 years. I mean, it got tons of accolades when it came out. Heath Ledger's Joker posthumously won an Oscar. He continues to get praised. You look up any list of, best performances, best villain performance, like he's always at the top of this list. This movie is just so good on so many levels. Some people might argue it's a little long. I think it runs about 2.5 hours, and you probably could trim a tiny bit out of there and tighten it up a bit. But who am I to say? I'm not Christopher Nolan. I'm a huge Batman fan. I'm probably one of the biggest Batman fans you're ever going to meet. This movie gave me everything I wanted. While I enjoyed the Michael Keaton Batmans when it came out in 89 and that run of Batman films, for what they were when they came out, at least the first three of those, the Clooney one we try and forget ever happened. By the time these came out, people wanted a more grounded superhero story, which I think arguably paved the way for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? By taking Batman seriously and doing it in a serious way, where the audience could conceptually believe that this could really happen, I think set the ground for Iron Man, which then launched the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But yeah, the Batman trilogy is definitely up there. You ask anyone, what's your favorite trilogy of the last 25 years? This makes most lists. I got to think most people are going to have this in their top 5. It's just so good on so many levels. So I'm going to go with it. Batman, number 2.
And I am surprised. I thought it would be your number 1 as well. Like you're such a Batman guy. So yeah, who knows what you're going to come up with. Okay, my number 2, I'm going with the Austin Powers trilogy.
Nice, good pick.
I really enjoyed them, and I think it's interesting because for me, the trilogy works on sort of 2 levels. Number 1, it's a very broad comedy. Lots of sight gags and catchphrases and all the pop culture references and stuff. But it also evolves its characters and it expands on the world that it's created, obviously. I feel like, unlike some comedy franchises or trilogies or things, like this one actually builds on each movie. Like the first one is just a fish out of water story. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And it's funny. And then the second one, it's all about his identity. He loses his mojo, right? So he's trying to figure out who is Austin Powers, sort of thing. And then the third one is all about the family, whether it's Austin and his dad or the fact that Austin and Dr. Evil are brothers, So I think it's this ridiculous twist that's in it, but it also kind of ties the whole trilogy together, and it makes you wonder, is Dr. Evil really one of the main characters of this whole trilogy? And the other thing too that I like about this trilogy is I would argue that Austin Powers forced James Bond movies to reinvent themselves.
Absolutely.
Because they just parodied everything. So then James Bond's going to be like, okay, we got to go in a different direction. What are we going to do? And that's where Daniel Craig came in. So I like these movies. I thought they were all incredibly funny. Some of the funniest stuff, I had my son watch them just last year. And he loved them too. He thought they were really, really great. I think some of the funniest parts come in the third movie in Goldmember, just really, really good stuff. So I don't think there's been a lot of talk of another one. I think it's a 3 and
have
done,
I got news for you? Mike Myers literally just this week was on a podcast where they asked him that, and he said that he is absolutely making a part 4. Didn't hesitate for a second. They said, are we going to see Austin Powers again? He said, yep, we're doing part 4.
Wow, so that should be interesting. So I thought it worked as a trilogy. I think it should just maybe end there, but we'll have to see how it goes. So that's my number 2. So
nice.
If Batman was your number 2,
I'm glad you had a comedy on yours. Yeah.
Yeah, go figure that I would like comedy, not mine. If Batman was your number 2, what the hell is your number 1? Give it to us.
Well, I told you coming into my number 3, we're getting nerdy. So we had Guardians of the Galaxy featuring Marvel. We got Batman featuring DC Comics. And then we're going to go back to Dungeons and Dragons. We're going with Lord of the Rings. Come on. Number 1 trilogy, Lord of the Rings. Fellowship of the Ring, 2001. Two Towers, 2002. Return of the King, 2003. Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogies. Come on. The movie was nominated for Best Picture. All 3 movies were nominated for Best. The third one won Best Picture. It was nominated for 11 Academy Awards. This movie, not only was a good movie, it was critically acclaimed. It was the best of the best when it came out. And this is one of those rare examples where they were making 3 movies. It wasn't, let's see how good part 1 does. Like, that was the whole pitch, is we are making a trilogy. They gave them the money. They were like, this thing is fantastic. And all the performers signed on. They made them back to back to back. And you don't see this kind of commitment from Hollywood to put this kind of money into anything. Like, this was a huge, well, I don't say huge risk, but this was definitely a big risk, and it delivered in every step of it. And this is one of those trilogies where I think each movie got better. I think part 2 was better than part 1, and I think part 3 was better than part 2. And believe me, I think part 1 was already pretty strong, but I think this one stepped up with each additional movie. And I think that's largely because it's based on a series of books, which again was conceived and written as a trilogy, a complete story. And Peter Jackson was smart enough to go, let's just follow that playbook. Somebody's already written these books. We're just going to turn these into movies. And let's again, obviously took some artistic liberties with some parts. The books, as you mentioned, are quite thick. And while the movies are very long, each in their own right, tons of stuff had to be cut out and was. And that's, you give the director freedom to make movies. He can make the movie he wants to make. So that's his call. But these movies are just so good. Like, I don't know the last time you sat down and watched any of these 3, but they are exceptionally good. Even if swords and swords and all that's fantasy races and magic and all, if that's not your jam, this is still a good movie. Like,
they're still good.
If this movie hadn't been as successful as it was, you would not have had Game of Thrones on HBO. Like, no way. Like, this opened the door for all of that kind of storytelling that came later. And Lord of the Rings, as a franchise, as an intellectual property, the books, the movies, have influenced so many creators over the years. And the absolute success of these movies and the fact that they were just so good and reached so many people and have continued to have this ongoing legacy has just opened up the door for this continued type of fantasy storytelling, which for me, again, this is my jam. I'm a Dungeons and Dragons guy. I love this kind of stuff. And even Dungeons and Dragons, the game was conceived largely based on the influence of the Lord of the Rings books. So yeah, it's all cyclical for me. So my number 1 favorite movie trilogy, there's no question, it's Lord of the Rings.
And Peter Jackson was totally the right director to get for that, even if I wouldn't have thought of it coming into it, because he hadn't done a whole lot of stuff before that, but he was perfect. I should have guessed this one, like coming into your number 1, like, what could it be? I should have known. Should have been. It
just goes to remind our listeners, we don't share lists, so we don't know who has what on the list. But I don't think there's any surprises about what your number 1's going to be. I don't know, but I know.
You know my number 1. I'm going with the original Star Wars trilogy. There's no question.
Of course.
And as I've said to you before, the prequels don't exist. The sequels don't exist. In my world, it's just the original Star Wars trilogy. I mentioned it off the top, that I loved the way that it wrapped things up with the very, very end of Return of the Jedi, and it wasn't really conceived as a trilogy right from the get-go. I know that's a surprise to a lot of people, but the first one's this sort of fairy tale in space that changed movies. Back in the 70s, there were disaster films and low-budget director-focused movies like Easy Rider. And they came out with this big splashy orchestral movie with these amazing special effects. It changed everything. And for the next few years after it came out, everything was influenced by Star Wars. I mean, everything. I know, I grew up in it. I was a kid. It was huge. And then it comes out, they're going to come out with a sequel. Like, oh man, I don't know, man. Up until then, the biggest sequel was probably Jaws 2. In terms of like what it can do, like, and this movie is going to come out with a sequel, and it was great. Empire Strikes Back was awesome because it understood the storytelling arc. In the second act, everything goes to crap. It's dark.
Yep.
Bad things happen. And then in the third one, it's all about sort of sort of redemption and all that, and even redemption's possible even for like the most evil character, the villain in movie history. So, like I say, there's so many reasons why it's so good. The original Star Wars trilogy is the greatest trilogy ever made in my mind. There is no question, and I'll die on that hill. So, Well, and again, if you say to people, "Oh, I watched the trilogy this weekend," everybody knows you're talking about Star Wars. Like it would be hard pressed to find someone who wouldn't, if they didn't immediately think that. If you said, I watched the trilogy this weekend," it's funny,
and someone's like, "What trilogy are you talking about?" You'd say, "I'll give you 3 guesses." I guarantee they get it in those 3 guesses, and I think most people that would be their first pick.
I don't know. I talked to some students about this last semester. I remember where they came up to me and they were talking after class. They're like, "Oh man, you're a Star Wars nerd, blah blah blah. So am I, blah blah blah." And we get chatting, and I'm like, when you mentioned the trilogy, they're like, "Yeah, the prequels." Because that's what they grew up with, right? They grew up with something different. And
Okay,
like,
yeah, that's a good point.
I'm like, man, the prequels. That's your take on the Star Wars trilogy? No, it's the original. No, man, it's the prequels. They're the best. Like, man, you guys are crazy. But I guess whatever you grew up with. So for me, it was the original Star Wars trilogy. That's my number one. And like I say, that's all there is to it. So on that note, what do you say we have something?
Fun with Caveman.
Okay, so, we're talking about trilogies, which involves a lot of sequels. So I thought we'd play another game of, I know it's like right from last week, but we're going to do this again. We're going to back-to-back this thing. And here we go. Here's this game.
Sequel or not.
So you remember this game, Derek, from last week?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Sequel or not. All I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the title of a movie. And you just got to tell me, is it a real sequel? Or did I just make it up? Is it not real?
Okay.
So we're going to start.
I don't have Greg to help me this week, so this is going to be a little tougher.
You'll do fine. This one's an easy one. Teen Wolf 2. And 2 is T-O-O. Teen Wolf.
Teen Wolf also?
Or as I like to
That's
call it,
real.
Teen Wolf also.
Yeah.
So what do you
that's
think?
real. That's real.
Yes, from 1987 with Jason Bateman. Teen Wolf 2. How about The Jerk 2? T-O-O. I'm also going with the T-O-O. The Jerk.
No, that doesn't sound real. No.
Came out in 1984. Starred Mark.
Did it have Steve Martin?
Nope. Mark Blankfield played the role.
I don't even know who that is.
Yeah. You might know him. He was on like Jekyll and Hyde Together Again. A couple of other things. Okay. Splash 2. T-O-O. Splash 2. Splash also.
No.
1987 starring Amy Yazbek. Absolutely.
Wow.
Movie. All right. You remember the movie The Ring? How about The Ring Silence Protocol?
The Ring. Well, I mean, I know they made a ton of sequels to that one, but that doesn't sound right. No, it's not right.
You are correct. I made that one up. How about A Christmas Story 2? A Christmas Story 2.
Oh, I know they made 2 different sequels to that, but I don't think either of them was just called A Christmas Story 2. I'm going to say no.
Yeah, it came out in 2012, starring Daniel Stern. A Christmas Story 2. All right. Remember last week we did Private Parts, and Paul Giamatti was in that. He also went on to be in a movie called Big Fat Liar in 2002.
Oh, yeah, I remember it.
But how about Bigger, Fatter Liar? Sequel or not?
No, that can't be.
Sure was, 2012.
Oh, man, I'm getting killed here.
Liar. Okay.
Oh, my God.
Paranormal Activity, Residual Haunting. Sequel?
Again, I know they made a bunch of those. And there's a stage play of those from Mervish. I saw the ad just this week. Paranormal Activity. Let's say that's real. That sounds stupid enough. Yeah.
No, it is not. Made that one up. Man. Okay. Remember Bachelor Party with Tom Hanks?
Yes.
How about Bachelor Party 2, The Last Temptation?
No way.
Sure was, from 2008. A real movie.
Jeez.
All right. Ready Player One, Second Level.
I know that one's not true because I know the sequel to the book is called Ready Player 2. So I'm going to say no.
You're correct. I made that one up. Okay. Remember Basic Instinct? How big that movie was?
Yes.
What about Basic Instinct 2?
That definitely had a sequel. I'm going to say yes.
Napoleon Dynamite 2. Vote for Pedro.
No, that can't be. No.
You're right. I made that one up. And the last one, I mentioned this earlier. I talked about Easy Rider. How about Easy Rider, The Ride Back?
I gotta say no. No.
Oh, it's a real movie. It came out in 2012.
Oh my God. Wow, I got killed on that. Can I have Greg? I'm going to do a phone a friend. Let me call Greg. We'll do those all over again.
We definitely need to get him back for this. So yeah, I guess that segment's got some legs because we did it 2 weeks in a row and I was able to fool you. So, all right. So next time it's my turn to nominate a movie for us to watch and review. I mentioned Austin Powers in my trilogy. And one of the things I liked about it was the first movie was that whole fish out of water story idea. It's been around forever. It's always a go-to for Hollywood movies, the fish out of water. So what I want to do is I want to go with one of my all-time fish out of water stories. We're going back to 1986, Crocodile Dundee.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. Crocodile Dundee from 1986. We're going to watch a review. So we're up for that. You're good to go?
Yeah. I mean, I that's one of my guilty pleasure movies whenever it's on and I'm like, oh my God, look what's on. And I sit and watch it because it's got such a great ending. So I always just watch right to the end. But let's do it.
Yeah, I don't think it's available on the streamers. So we'll have to find a way to rent it or something like that to be able to watch it. But we're going to do Crocodile Dundee next time out. So until then, I'm Chris McBrien. On behalf of myself and Derek Myers, we want to say thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.